Hey everybody, Mr. Moffin coming back at you with another APUSH video, continuing our look at topic 5.8, the military conflict in the Civil War. Now, last time we were looking at what I call the tail of the tape, basically, taking a look at the basic advantages that both the North and the South are going to be having, challenges that both sides will be having, to kind of bring us up to what is going to be now, today, real battlefield action taking place. Now, following the surrender at Fort Sumter in early 1861, Lincoln has now made a commitment to keep the Union together. And this is very important, and I'm going to repeat this as we go through the Civil War. Early on for Lincoln, this war is about saving the Union. And Lincoln is known to have said that, if he could save the Union by getting rid of slavery, he would. But if he could also save the Union by keeping slavery, he would. So this is not a war at this point to abolish slavery. This is a war to keep the Union together. Now, that being said, we talked about how the Union is going to have a lot of advantages. It's going to have almost all the manufacturing. It's going to have a supermajority of the farming. It's going to have a supermajority of the railroad lines. It's going to have a clear majority of able-bodied young men to go fight. Historically, revolutions, secessions don't work out very well. So many are going to believe that the North, the Union Army, is going to be successful, and that this will be a short-lived, glorified uprising that Union forces will squash very quickly. But as we will learn today, not so fast. Now, the question becomes, if you are the Union Army, how are you going to strategize to achieve victory? How is this going to, play out? What are you going to do to achieve victory? And if you can believe it, the commander of Union forces still at this time is Winfield Scott. Yes, old fuss and feathers, elderly geriatric Winfield Scott is still the commander of Union forces. Now, he's not going to be there much longer. But he is going to get credit for kind of putting together the basic plan, the basic strategy that Lincoln's going to be using to try to win the war. A critical part of this is going to be implementing what's going to be called the Anaconda Plan. Now, if you take a look at this map right here, you can see what appears to be a snake, aka an anaconda. And as you look at this map, you can see what the Anaconda Plan tries to do. Basically trying to use the naval power of the Union military to blockade all of these southern ports. And the idea being is that as Union naval vessels choke off these ports, kind of like a snake would choke you, you would slowly squeeze the life out of the Confederate army. Now, this is a bold endeavor. For the first couple of years of the war, there's going to be more holes in this blockade than Swiss cheese, but it is going to be eventually very successful, and it will do its job, ultimately choking off the ability of the Confederacy to receive foreign aid at its ports of entry. Now, in addition to that, you're also going to take note that the Union Army is going to devise a divide and conquer strategy to defeat the South. With the first kind of wedge, if you will, in terms of trying to divide the Confederacy, is by trying to take control of the Mississippi. If you take control of the Mississippi, then you isolate the western part of the Confederacy from the rest of the Confederacy. And note, the Mississippi is clearly now the most important waterway in the United States. So if the Union Army can control the Mississippi, they've got a major upper hand in winning this conflict. Now, this is not going to be the only part of divide and conquer, but we're still pretty early on in the war. The other important part of the strategy is to invade the Commonwealth of Virginia and take the Confederate capital at Richmond. And this is going to be pretty interesting. Richmond's located right about here. And as you can see, Richmond is very close to right here, Washington, D.C. You got the two capitals through most of the Civil War within about 90 miles of each other. And so the thought is that Richmond is so close to the capital of the Union that if Richmond falls and falls quickly, you've cut the head of the snake off and basically the Confederacy will begin to collapse. Hopefully you would be able to capture some of the top Confederate leadership, yada, yada, yada. So because of the strategy, because of the advantage in terms of resources, there's going to be a general sense that the Union Army is going to win and win very easily. That then brings us to the Battle of Bull Run. We're going to be seeing American forces begin to invade Virginia as part of an attempt to try to get to Richmond. And American forces are going to be coming up against, for the first time, a real squad of Confederate soldiers. And at this Battle of Bull Run, which is going to take place between D.C. and Richmond, this was not a surprise battle. I mean, this has been building for several months now. And, this is still, kind of the last major war in history to be fought in a Napoleonic way. In other words, there's not really sneak attacks. Two different armies show up at a flat plain for the most part. It's certainly known in advance, and the two armies just meet on that flat plain and duke it out. And as it appears that Bull Run, Manassas, is going to be the site of this first major battle between the Army of the Potomac in the north and the Army of Virginia, we're going to see actually D.C. socialites make their way to the nearby hillsides where it appears the battle is going to be taking place. And they viewed it almost as if we would look at like a football game or like a sporting event. People showed up, they brought blankets, they brought picnic lunches, they wanted to see a fight, a real fun fight. Remember, we had not really fought on American soil for the most part since the War of 1812. So this is a whole generation of Americans that really had not been exposed to war before, and so they thought this would be entertaining, especially folks from the D.C. area that thought, hey, this is really only going to be the major battle of the war. The Union Army will stomp on the Confederates, they'll surrender, it's over, and they got a chance to watch the game, so to speak. However, these Union soldiers that invade Virginia, boy, are they going to be green. They're going to be very inexperienced as compared to the Virginians that in many respects had been kind of gunning for this for a long time. They had been preparing for the time when the Yanks would be invading to destroy their lives, destroy their livelihood, and the time has now come to pass. And so you've got these young men in the South that are much more prepared to use the firepower to actually fight in battle, and this is going to be proven in the Battle of Bull Run. These Union forces are going to start to become overwhelmed by Confederate forces. They're going to begin to be chased back. You start to hear the infamous rebel yell, which is going to have almost traumatic effects on these veterans that survived the battle. That they were being hooted and hollered at and chased for their lives, and oh my gosh, these Union soldiers think this is not how it's supposed to happen. We're supposed to be dominating, we're supposed to be running these Virginians out of here, and it's actually happening in reverse. This is also going to allow for a young officer by the name of Thomas Jackson to gain some significant acclaim. He will be so revered for his ability to withstand the initial Union advance that his men will begin to call him Stonewall Jackson to kind of show his toughness in defending the line. So Jackson starts to become a household name as a result of this battle. But the bigger thing from this is that when these Union soldiers are basically chased back to D.C., this is going to make a very, very important thing very clear. This war is not going to be short. This is not going to be over very quickly. Lincoln now has to really be mindful that this is going to take a long time. A lot of men are going to die to try to keep the Union, bring the Union back together. And so Bull Run is really the only major battle that's going to be taking place in the first year of the war. Once this happens, you're going to see that the Union Army and the Confederate Army is going to start to organize a little bit better. You've got Lee that's going to be brought in as the leader of Confederate forces. So this is Robert E. Lee right here. In fact, Lincoln desperately wanted Lee to lead the Union Army, but Lee said that his first loyalty was to Virginia, and Virginia had called him, so he was there. And without getting Lee, Lincoln is going to go for a man that was highly touted as this young upstart that seemed to have a great military mind. He seemed to have the respect of his men. He came from a well-to-do family. He was spit and polish. You know, the idea being is that if you could kind of, in a laboratory build a successful general, well, George McClellan, as pictured here, was seen as the guy that, would fit the bill. So Lincoln, turns over control to George McClellan, and McClellan is going to work out a plan that he thinks is going to be best, because one of the things that's going to be an early problem between Lincoln and McClellan is that Lincoln really wants McClellan to do a direct assault into Virginia, to try to kind of do what was done initially, but this time actually getting to Richmond, actually getting to the capital of the Confederacy and win. McClellan doesn't see it the same way. McClellan is going to be a very cautious general. McClellan does not believe in taking risks. McClellan does not believe that you should invade an enemy territory unless you have overwhelmingly massive superior numbers, which McClellan never believed that he had. He always believed that he was outnumbered. He always believed that Virginia's forces outnumbered what he had, and he was deeply committed to saving the lives of his men, which is admirable. He did not want to just throw his men into a meat grinder like many other generals would be more than willing to do. But this is going to make Lincoln really upset, because Lincoln wants action. He wants the Confederacy stopped. The faster that the Confederacy is beaten, the faster that Lee is beaten, the faster this war ends and more lives get saved. But McClellan has, what Lincoln will go on to say, a case of the slows. And so he is not very aggressive, and he comes up with many excuses to not cross the Potomac and invade into Virginia. So what does McClellan come up with? An alternative plan, which is going to be known as the Peninsular Campaign. So as we get into the summer of 1862, we're going to be seeing McClellan leading the Army of the Potomac down the Potomac River, down to the Chesapeake Bay, down near what is Norfolk, Virginia, and begin to land here on what they call the peninsula down here, and begin to work in a northwesterly direction, heading towards Richmond. So the idea being is that you kind of outflank Lee, you get down here where they're not expecting you, you land here, and you move up quickly, and by the time Lee figures out what's going on, they won't be prepared at Richmond. You stop Lee, you stop Richmond, you win the war, ball game. And at first it looks like it's working pretty well. We see Union forces begin to, land on the peninsula, and they're starting to get some small, skirmishes that are going to be victories, basically. But as they get close to Richmond, Lee will begin to engage actively with McClellan, and this will lead to a week-long series of battles, collectively known as the 7 Days Battles, where we're going to be seeing, well over 20,000 casualties in the course of this week. And remember, a casualty is someone that's either wounded or killed in battle. And what Lee will do is outgeneral McClellan. McClellan will not be able to get the advantage. He will not be able to ultimately outflank Lee. He will not be able to properly invade Richmond. Lee defends the capital of the Confederacy, and McClellan is forced to retreat. And get used to this. Get used to Lee engaging with a Union commander, and that Union commander losing badly. And McClellan is basically forced to retreat in shame. Lincoln is disgusted, and he temporarily takes away command of the Union forces from McClellan. He basically demotes McClellan and tries to bring in somebody else, somebody new. And that is going to be John Pope. Now, and I'll show you here a picture of John Pope. That's him right there. And so, think about what Lincoln was wanting early on. Lincoln wants an invasion into Virginia. That's what he's wanting. He had been denied that by McClellan. He just felt that if there was a big invasion of Virginia, Lee can be stopped. And Pope basically says, unlike McClellan, I'm your man. I can do it. Let's go. And Lincoln says, make it happen. So Pope leads Union forces back into Virginia. By this time, we're getting into July of 1862, just a few weeks after the 7 Days Battle, and we're going to be seeing Union forces fighting again at Bull Run. And guess what? Again, Union forces will be stopped, and Pope will get replaced. So not looking too good for the Union Army early on. We'll see you next time.